All right. Good morning, everyone. We are starting a small section on the influence of the stars. Inyan Hashpas HaKochavim, Perek Zayin, and he begins like this. We mentioned the first section. Shekol Inyani Hagashmiyim, every physical thing. Sharasham, its root to Bekochos and Avdalim. Every physical thing has a root in the spiritual realm. Okay, nothing in this physical world is not rooted, meaning there is some connection, some dotted line which you may not be able to see, appreciate, feel, but that is connected to the spiritual realm, where it is getting its influence from, it's getting its power from. This table would not exist unless there was something up in Shemayim, which is giving it its power to exist. That is the way the entire physical world works. There's nothing that stands independent. Everything is influenced by the world, by the spiritual world. V'amnam, sham mishtarshirim ha'inyanim ha'ele b'chol hadrachim shetrichim lishtarish. Okay, it begins at this very lofty level, then it goes down and down and down. V'achach trichim li'atik limashich ha'legashmios b'tzura shetricha limatzebo. And so it goes from the most spiritual, in the classical terminology, we have something called Atzilus. Atzilus is like the highest level. The name is not even a name of its own. It's called from the word Eitzel, next to. It's the place that's next to Hashem, so it doesn't even have its own independent entity or name. It's the most spiritual. Then you have things that start from there, and then they go down to a lower level, to a lower level, to a lower level, and they follow the levels of angels, and basically everything is getting a little bit more physical, a little bit more grounded to this world as it goes from level to level to level to level, okay? For this purpose, for the reason to create a medium through which the spiritual realm is able to make its way into this physical world, the stars and their constellations were prepared. Shebehem, through them, through the stars, through the constellations, uvisivuvehem, and through their movements, nimshachim anatik, v'natakim kol osam and yanam shnishtarshu v'nizamnu lamala beruchnias elegashmis polamatav omnim po b'tzura uya. Through the stars are the medium through which all of that comes down to earth. In other words, what is the lowest level they are going to have as something comes down to earth? Again, you have something happening at the highest level, and then it goes, you have, in Shema, we're going to read soon in the Brachos Shema, V'ofanim v'chayis HaKodesh, right? There are different levels of angels, so it goes from level to level to level to level, and then how does it enter earth? What is the medium through which it enters earth? That is the stars. The stars, the constellations, those are the places where the spiritual realm, that is, if we were to ask ourselves, like, why did God create this? God created the stars for this reason. The reason behind the incredible amount of stars and all of that is because this is all what God in his wisdom decided is necessary to bring these things down. From his perspective, people question, the need for so much in the higher realms. When we think about even the fact that the Milky, that our galaxy is so small compared to everything else around it, well, the answer might be yes. Shemaim's also very large and mammoth compared to what's around, compared to this world. Okay, there's a very significant and sophisticated system that is needed in order to bring all that spirituality down to this earth. So don't be surprised by even just the amount of stars in this world. And if you believed in a creator, why would you need this? His answer to that question, he was never posed the question in that way, and he wasn't aware of all the stars beyond. Maybe he was to some degree, but it was certainly not the extent of the galaxies around, of everything around us. But his point would be that, these are all part of a spiritual system. They play a role. Granted, they are so far away, and granted, they're so large, but that's exactly the point. They are more spiritual, they are more lofty, but through them, all of the hashpa'ah, all the divine influence flows through them. Okay, then he says, okay, fine. The bottom line is, let's just one last point, and then we'll pick up, God willing, tomorrow. And that is that when we think about the earlier generations, we think about people serving the stars, and we think, in earlier generations they were just ignorant, and they were just immature, and they were unsophisticated, and that's why they served the stars and the constellations and things of that nature. The truth is, it's the opposite. They were much more spiritually refined, and therefore they were able to recognize the spirituality of the stars. Whereas for you and me, this is just something we see. Like, the only person who cares about the stars is like a little child looking at a wishing star. I think it's silly, like foolishness, but that's because we are unsophisticated. That's because we don't see the real spirituality that existed within the stars. In the earlier generations, where they were much more spiritually elevated and educated and had a much greater sensitivity, they recognized these stars actually were the source of significant impact, significant things happening down on earth, and therefore it was more logical for them, if we understand a little bit, why they're serving these stars, Because to them, they saw the spirituality in them. When we don't serve the stars, Baruch Hashem, because it's Asur D'Oraisa and it's Avodah Zarah, but it's also coming from a place of a lack of sophistication. It's coming from a place where we are just ignorant, we don't understand, we don't see, and that's why we're not serving them. So just to appreciate that, we're missing out by not having that appreciation. And then those earlier generations, at least spiritually speaking, they're much more sophisticated than we were. Okay.